You should hear now. There we go. All right. Yeah, I'll take a few seconds. Oh. Yes. The microphone says off, but it's on. And now it's also on. Okay, thank you everyone for coming today. We normally, so Ika, before you run away, I'll wait. I'll just. It's all right. I'll just waste time until we come back. Thanks everyone for coming along. This is Deep Tech Melbourne. We like to talk about the intersection of like science and entrepreneurialism. We're always looking for speakers and sponsors, of course, specifically sponsors, because these pizzas and the beer doesn't come for free, unfortunately. So if you're interested in sponsoring and or speaking, please do reach out to us. We love to hear about all sorts of different topics, whether it's on the more technical side or the science side, or whether it's about a founder's journey, like from ideation through to delivering something. And even if you haven't got that far yet, it's just interesting to hear about everyone's different journeys. I can hear myself coming out of there. Can you just check that we might need to mute? Can you, next slide? Oh, but sorry, before we do that, if anyone hasn't already, it'd be really good if you just fill out the survey. It just helps us understand the sorts of audience that we have and where your backgrounds are from and what your understanding of deep tech and other such things are. It's like 5 questions, it's not too arduous. Okay, so welcome. I'll hand over to Ika to do his spiel. Oh, hang on, can I also hand this over to you?
Of course. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Deep Tech Meetup. Yeah, I'm Ika Zeller. I'm the ecosystem director here of the Stone and Chalk hub in Melbourne. And yeah, before we start, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we gathered here. And of course, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. And also recognize that sovereignty was never ceded, and there's always was and always will be Aboriginal land. We gathered here today. Yeah, I thought I'd just, yeah, so great after a few months break to have you back here again. So like, just give you maybe a quick plug for you, those who don't know, like Stone and Chalk. We are like a non-for-profit, and we basically exist to help startup founders succeed and propel forward in their journey. And in this hub here in Melbourne, we have about 50 startups and scale-ups at all different stages, from people just starting off with their ideas all the way up to, we have 2 50-person scale-ups here in the hub as well. And yeah, the team is just working really hard, helping the founders connect to the right people at the right time to help them propel forward in their journey. So yeah, if any of you are interested in finding out more, feel free to yeah, get in touch, and I can tell you a bit more about it afterwards. And like, can also, if anyone likes, I can give you a tour upstairs. There's like 2 levels of co-working up on top of here in this building. It used to be a Union Bond store, so it's also quite nice. It's like heritage listed, and yeah, I can give you a quick tour on as well. So, but like, yeah, maybe now I'll pass it back to Ray to introduce the speakers. Thank you so much. Oh, yes.
Thanks, Ika. We have a Discord, which we occasionally frequent, but trying to get people in this area together and share and, you know, help each other out. Rising tide with small boats and all that. So please do jump in. Don't worry, we'll hammer this QR code later on as well, so you won't miss it. So yes, I already talked about speakers and sponsors. Bit of housekeeping. There's toilets at the back there, cups and mugs in the cupboard, and there's some water there. There was pizza, that's already gone. There are some drinks, I think, still, so please do help yourself. So let's jump to the poll. Hopefully we've got some answers. Okay, what words do you associate with deep tech? Okay, science applications, machine learning, complex. Yeah, aliens. Aliens. Work. If aliens were work, it would be boring, wouldn't it? Science, computers. Yeah, okay. Is this your first Deep Tech Melbourne event? Yes. No. Attended many times. Okay, that's good. Good balance. Quite a few new people. That's always good to see. How did you find out about us? Nav is talking. That's always a good one. Via speaker, you found me. Oh. Oh, that's ominous. I know what you did last summer. Yeah. Launch Vic. Ah, nice. Wow. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what area do you study and work in? Okay, this is a bit small, but we've got the largest piece here. 4 people in climate, 3 people in geology, mining, 1 person agriculture, and then we've got advanced materials, 2 people, and 4 people AI/ML, 2 people in energy. It's quite a good mix, actually. I think last time we had a bit of a different makeup, but geology mining is quite surprisingly always quite high. Yeah, well, anyway, later on you can try and find out who does what. What's the next one? What kind of org do you work for? Oh, this is interesting. This is very different last time. We had more students looking for work and entrepreneurs last time. Seems like most people at startups, some at enterprise, a couple of academic researchers. Cool, welcome. Oh, this is quite different as well. Last time we had a pretty even split between all of them. Everyone felt the distribution was like quite even. Yeah. So here tonight we have a much more technical audience. So maybe we can nerd out a bit. And how important are these to your deep tech community? Networking. That was the same as last time. Drinks and pizza is obviously second. It's usually first, to be honest. Talks, social events, panel discussions down the bottom. Okay. All right. So keep doing what we're doing. That's what I'm hearing. Any other suggestions or feedbacks for Deep Tech Melbourne? Thanks. Thank you for that. Should have just said not yet. Come back later. All right. Okay, cool. Let's get on to the talks. So tonight we have got Jenna and Nav from Sensad and Charlie from Electrolith. I think we've nominated Charlie to go first if he wants to. Otherwise, yeah, are you happy to go first? Yeah. Okay, so everyone, welcome Charlie. We'll just give us a couple of seconds to wire up the laptop. We'll just need to plug in the laptop here. I'll let you do that. Sorry, move that. And then I'll give you this. That's the microphone for the stream. Oh.
Yeah, these two are too close.
Maybe it's the TV. I think it's yours. You need to mute your laptop.
that was worth going for. You move your laptop, buddy.
There you go. I think that'll be okay.
We take the tech out of deep tech, right? Like, all right, cool.
It's always a problem streaming media.
So this is the YouTube, and that's here.
Yes.
All right, and that's my screen. Okay, cool.
So I'm just going to share your screen when you're ready.
All right, so
Yeah.
I need to share my screen.
Oh, you already are.
Am I?
Oh, you were.
I was?
Yeah. Now
Okay.
go back.
All right. Okay, hold on a sec. Sorry, everybody. So that's my screen. I'm sharing. I'm just going to do one thing. So, okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Thanks for everybody for taking the time to come out. I'm not going to start the video just yet.
I'm just hiding a little.
So first, I want to say thanks. I'll go pretty quickly. I'm American, so I've never been short of a few words and being able to talk fast. So if I talk too quickly, please yell out. The first question is, how many international people have we got here today? Because I think I've heard a fair few. How many actual Australians are there here?
What do you mean by that?
Well, okay, I'm actually very, very boring. Okay, that probably wasn't okay. Never mind. We're moving right along. Born in Australia. How many were born in Australia? See, that's great. Well, on our team, actually, we've got 3 of us. I'm from America. Sean, our CTO, is from South Africa, and Jose is from Mexico. So we've got a very international team, and it's good to see a number of internationals. And we'll talk about our business a little bit and what we're doing. Very little of it, with the exception of the IP, is in Australia. Actually, much of what we're doing and our investors are overseas. So we'll walk through that in a minute. First, I'll tell you a bit about me. Charlie, I've been in the country now for 17 years, been a citizen for some period of time, as it were, and have been in corporate investment banking and all that. And about 5 years ago, came to the environmental side of the equation and the startup. So I've been in lithium space since 2019, I think it was, in a number of different roles, and joined Electrolyth about a year and a half ago, which, as we say, is much of its adult life. I'm going to show you a video because a video is better than me talking about it. Plus, we spend a lot of money on the video, so we have to use it to make ourselves feel better. Now, hopefully,
before you do that, if you want the sound to come out, because I've muted your laptop, but if you unmute it, it's going to go weird.
Let's turn that off.
Off button doesn't work.
Off button. That's deep tech. Right. Oh, that old trick. Yeah. All right. So my volume's going on. That's not.
Sorry.
So thanks. So we made that with Monash a couple months ago, and for an award ceremony that's coming up, and we've had some really good success with it. So what I thought I'd do is really, really quickly. A few people have asked about our journey and what we're doing, and not just about the technology, but about raising funds and how we're going about that process. Because I think many people here have either gone through the Series A or will be going through it and thinking about pitches. And I remember when we started, people said, "Oh, send us your pitch," and I said to Sean, "Why do people keep asking for my pitch? I'm not pitching for anything." And part of this ecosystem is this sort of mentality that you have to fall into line and do certain things. And I think over time we've learned that there's a rhythm, or there's a meaning to it. So what I thought I might do is walk you through some of the slides that Sean, Jose, and I present just about every day. So this morning we had a call at 7 a.m. with Marathon Oil, which is a large petroleum group out of the States. Chevron after that. We're meeting with InQtel next week, and we go through this constantly. Now we'll do it really quickly because you guys aren't investing, but if you are, let me know. But just to give you an idea of how we pull it all together in a pretty simple way. We try to do it in a way that makes sense to everyone. I'm not a chemical engineering PhD. Sean is. Sometimes we get people asking really remarkable questions. I don't know, pretend to answer those, but we can talk about the building blocks, if you will, about what's going on. So you saw in the video the problem that we're trying to solve. So lithium, as you all know, is in your cars or your electric cars if you have one. It's in your batteries in your phones and your laptops. What we don't realize is how difficult it is to get it out of the ground. So this is a salar in Argentina, and you can see the folks there shoveling it out of the ground. And essentially, the way it works is you pump the lithium brines to the surface, and it sits and it evaporates over 18 months. So it uses a lot of water, a lot of time, and a lot of wasted energy, but also really bad for the environment and the cultures and the indigenous people there. So about 20 years ago or so, DLE was invented, direct lithium extraction. Won't go through this in great detail, but there are essentially 4 types. And this is a McKinsey report. We try to do as much as we can using external reports. We don't say, hey, this is something that Sean or Jose and I thought up. This is something that McKinsey would have said. And they said, look, there are 4 types of lithium DLE in the market today. Adsorption, ion exchange, and solvent exchange are the 3 that are commercial. The 4th is membranes. And that's the holy grail, if you will, of lithium extraction. The problem, as it says quite clearly in the blue area, is that they're pre-commercial. So our technology was invented by a world-renowned professor at Monash, which is where we came from. And he came up with a lithium selective membrane. And this is as technical as we'll get over the next 2 or 3 slides. That does 2 things. It takes us through the DLE phase, which is on the left-hand side to lithium chloride. And it takes us through a refining step. Now, our competitor processes, they do lithium, DLE, I should say. They just make the lithium chloride. So our ability to go all the way to refining is a step change to what you'd see in the market. And these competitors are real competitors. They are major companies, mostly in the US, highly valued companies that all came through startup land about 2 or 3 years ago. So our process does all that in one step. It does that using this very specific membrane. And you can see how the chambers work. We take the brine out of the aquifer, we put it against the membrane itself, and then we put the remaining brine back in. So we're not doing anything negative to the brine. We're depleting the brine of its lithium rich substance. This is something I made last night, and I think it actually is all right. Maybe I made it 2 nights ago. They all blend in. Anyway, I'm sure you understand that experience. But basically, what we're trying to show here is lithium brine coming down, and we have a plus and a minus charge. And all we're doing is sending a potential variation across the membrane, and that's pushing the lithium ions against the membrane itself. Those are the green dots, and those then go through the membrane. Meanwhile, the brine itself goes down and back into the aquifer where it came from. So revolutionary in that context. Because we're not using water or chemicals, which our competitors do, and what you saw in those pictures earlier, we end up being the least, having the least impact on the environment. So no water, no chemicals required. If you're in the Andes, in Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, that water is a very precious resource. If you're in California, it's a precious resource. I mean, to be honest, it's precious for all of us. No chemicals and no carbon dioxide required. This is a third party that's done work on us and a number of other DLE participants, and you can see that we're at the low end of the environmental cost curve. What we think is pretty cool is that by removing water and chemicals, we also end up at the very low end of the cost curve. So not only are we the most environmentally friendly solution, we're also the most cost-effective method. And that gets many of our potential customers and investors very excited. So we like to say, and I'm sure many of you had this experience, hey, that all sounds really great on paper, but so what? So we've now been able to take real-world brines, and you can see a few of them on the screen here today. Rio Tinto's brines are there. Please don't take a picture of this slide. I should have removed some of these numbers, but probably doesn't really mean anything. Anyway, Rio Tinto slide, Rio Tinto on the left, a very murky brine from Utah in the middle. That's actually a clear bottle. It's supposed to be a clear liquid, and you can see it looks like a jug of coffee or mud. We've taken spodumene leach, which is hard rock leach out of Western Australia. And today, Sean, who's over there, is running, you can't really see it on this picture, but he's running brines from Chile, from SQM. These are major companies, not so much Mandrake, but the other ones are major companies. And we're actually doing it in the lab with our technology and our people. The challenge, though, and we are very clear about this, and this is the scale up and the challenge for deep tech. It works in the lab. It works at a membrane, which you saw in the video. We need to scale that membrane and make the technology work as we get bigger and bigger. So when we made the video, I think we were at the 5 or the 64 square centimeter size. Since that period, we've moved into the 190 square centimeter, and Sean and the team are on their way to making it to the next stage for our piloting, which is 1,000 square centimeters. That's not easy. We had the McKinsey partner who was in the office last week, and I don't know if you dealt with McKinsey. He came in like he was American. He came in like he knew everything, and he said, "Oh, scaling's easy." And we all sort of said, "It's not that easy. It's really hard. You've got to actually get something that works at a very small postage size, essentially, that lets lithium through and get it to a commercial size and make a lot of them." And the way that we do that is we trade off the 4 variables that sit in a membrane itself. This isn't the exact numbers, and it isn't everything that you need to know, but you get the idea. Selectivity is how much lithium goes through for everything you don't want to go through. So if you get 1,000 lithiums, how many pieces of sodium come across? Flux is how much goes across, the actual volume that happens. Duration, how long it lasts, and size, how big it is. So we had our team meeting today with our membrane team, and we saw some really interesting results where selectivity was doing really well, and we traded flux in a certain way to get the selectivity back down. So you're happy to make certain trade-offs to get the special sauce, so to speak, to hit the target zone. I'm almost done, by the way. We've got through all of this a number of customers, and this is pretty cool. When you have a really good technology and a good backer, we're very blessed with having good backers and good technology. And I should say none of us are actual founders. None of us actually came up with this idea. This was invented by Professor Wang, who, if he were here today, he would basically say, "I've got no interest in running a company. You guys do it, and just basically, I'll collect my paycheck. Thank you very much." He's a lovely guy. So we come in in this really lucky way where we're saying, okay, well, the technology works. The flip of the technology working is customers are calling us. So we're in a really lucky spot where customers are saying, "Hey, look, we've got a problem. How can you help us solve it?" We also have competitors that are doing the same, which is pretty cool. Jose and I are working on this today for a meeting we have on Thursday, where the question was, what's the customer journey? And you have these questions, you get the question 8 different times, you try to answer it 10 different ways. And so at the moment, we're trying this slide out to show you what the customer journey looks like. And essentially what we do is we say, okay, well, customer calls up, we have a few chats, we say, hey, send us some brines, which is the stuff that you saw in that picture. We then run it through the machine, and if it works, we sign them up for a pilot. And that's pretty much it. I think it's much more complicated than that. It's not really. The biggest risk that folks have is, well, you're a startup. What do we do about it? And we work our way through that. The Series A is getting very close to being finished, knock on wood, as we did earlier today. We're raising 25 mil Aussie. We're doing that with support of our existing investors. As you saw in the video, and I mentioned, we're spun out of Monash, so they're an existing investor. They put capital plus the IP in. We've got IP Group, which some of you may know. They do university commercialization, amongst other things. They're very well known out of the UK, and we've got Rio Tinto. So pretty lucky on that side. They're all looking to participate in the Series A, and we've got a number of other pretty well-known funds that are circling around. We're really lucky that we have that. Those funds will help us scale the membrane, which is the bottom, and then equally build prototypes, pilot plants, if you will, that will go out into the field. And that'll be the next value inflection point when we've got a prototype at Rincon, which is in Argentina, one in Smackover, which is in Arkansas, and one in the Paradox Basin, which is Utah. At that stage, we can say, not only have we done it in the lab, but we've done it at a large scale in the real world. Just wanted to mention one quick thing. This is something we work on internally. And this isn't part of the pitch, but some of you will struggle, as we have, herding and getting our messaging right for our own team. And when we get stuck in the Series A, and this is what I wanted to really impart, when you get stuck in your Series A, as many of you know, you kind of lose sight of the business. And I like to say, I always get it wrong, but when the hen's away, the chickens will play, or when the chickens away, the hens will play. When Sean, Jose, and I are busy, and we are busy from 7 a.m. to now, the lab needs to run. And oftentimes, people are well-intentioned, but PhDs go, we all know this, they go off and, and they make up great stuff. And like, that had nothing to do with what we're actually doing here. So what we've done over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've sat down with each of our members and we've talked about what are the actual objectives of the company? How are we going to measure them? How are you going to work together and report against them? So this is just one measure. It's like a balanced scorecard in a certain way, but it's specific to our business. And it's helped us a lot as we go through it. So wrapping it all up, we're inventing the most versatile, most cost-efficient and cleanest method of extracting and refining lithium, the fundamental element of a sustainable future. Our system is modular, scalable, and simple. We make lithium hydroxide carbonate, which goes to Apple or whatever as end product. And because we're lowest in the in the environmental side, we're also lowest on the cost curve. So we're in a really good spot for that. And it's been a wild journey. That's really the end of the pitch. It's been a wild journey and a lot of fun. As I said, we all are. We're working around the clock, but we're getting near the end, and it's been an exciting ride for all of us. So, how did I go? Pretty good. Good. So 20 minutes. Yeah, with a video.
Do we have any questions? We'll probably have like a couple of questions maybe. And then,
yes, sir.
How do you go with vested interests at the investor stage one level when they're, like, say, for Rio is talking about global markets per se, and yet, if you get this going out of Australia, why are we exporting all the lithium, say, to China, who are selling us back all the damn batteries?
Yep.
When we should really be looking at that kind of best scenario ourselves, and being able to just take from the ground, do through that process, and build our own.
Well, and that's what the impetus of it is. So our technology is really suited for North America and Latin America, and the idea is that we do all the refining in one stage in that country. And so we've got the U.S. government looking to invest. We've got parts of the Australian government where we can do the extraction, the refining, and then selling that battery grade product to the battery manufacturer itself. Now that battery manufacturer may be in Korea, it may be in China, it may be elsewhere, but we're getting as much of that part of the value chain as we can.
Oh, okay.
For the U.S. government, there's quite a bit in North America, as we showed in a couple of those pictures. That is the sell to them. It's coming out of Utah, it's coming out of Arkansas, it's going through our system. It's not using water, chemicals, all that, but it is staying in country. And as I mentioned, we're heading up to Sydney on Thursday to speak with a certain investor, and they really just want to talk about what it does for the U.S. government and national security.
So, sorry, you're talking about the process as being reapplied to any other markets, like you say, Utah, and that, not specifically Australia.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah. So we've got a very different approach. We don't think of our company as Australian at all. And it's controversial in a way. We've got the American flag there. Sorry. The IP is. That's it. So the IP is, and so, but one of the things, I'm Australian, American, and I love being here, but we don't want to hamper ourselves. And what happens when you meet investors, they say, I used to do this as American. Oh, you're Australian. You wouldn't really know, how to add 2 and 2 to get to 4. Yeah. Now, that's not true, but there's a prejudice. Yeah. And so we say, no. We're doing it in Utah. We're doing it in all these areas. But actually, our technology doesn't really apply to Australia. So very little of the actual work that it does can be used on hard rock, which is what you have in Western Australia. because hard rock is this stuff and it doesn't go through the membrane.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
but it's a challenge for us, and we do say we are Australian, but we're also a global company based in Australia.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Can you talk about the intellectual property? Is there any risk of another company beating you to the punch?
Yep. So the question was, can we talk about the IP and the risk of others? There's always risk to the IP. There's a slide here. I'll show you. We spent quite a bit of time looking at our competitors. If you recall back at the beginning, I mentioned we're the only membrane competitor. There are many in the competing technologies. Because we're a different type of technology, our offering is a step change to those. So we feel ourselves well differentiated. From a membrane perspective, we have very strong IP protection. We look after our patents, we protect the patents, and we grow the patent field. So we're feeling very comfortable. That being said, we recognize that others could come in. We do have the first mover advantage, and we have the benefit of the good name of Rio Tinto to help us through that. If we didn't have that, I'd be much more concerned about others that would try to come in. The professor that found this technology, Huan-Ting Wang, he's the Sir John Monash Professor of Monash University. So he is at the top of his game when it comes to membranes. So you'd have to get a really smart person. We're all smart in the room, but he's a really smart guy, as opposed to the rest of us. You'd have to have some real smarts, and it isn't stuff where you're just like, oh, what if we add a little, salt into this thing? There's a lot of work that goes into this, but we are very mindful of that.
Might be a naive question, but lithium miners are having a hard time at the moment, aren't they? That there's either an oversupply or something's wrong in the market.
There's nothing wrong with the market. The market is purely efficient. There's a little bit of an oversupply. No, you're exactly right. So the lithium markets the lithium price has essentially collapsed over the last 2 years. Now, there's a couple of pieces to this, but in terms of where will lithium prices go over time. So we've got charts. In fact, actually, this is actually a good thing to put up in the corner. If you look here in the upper right-hand side of the picture, you'll see the long-term view for lithium prices. So the gray line is where we are today at $14,000 a ton, which is essentially an all-time low, and many would expect it to recover. The important part for us is if you look at the chart here, we're the green box here. We've got essentially, in this case, it's carbonate. We've got about $9,000 a ton before we become the marginal producer. And because lithium is a volume game, as long as there's a more marginal producer than you're in a really good spot. It's like fertilizers or whatever. You just need to make sure that you're below the clearing costs and that someone else is the marginal producer above you. If you were here, which is the Chinese or this group out of Canada, you'd be a bit more worried because those mines, those processes will be turned off once the price goes below 7,700. In a strange way, as the price goes down, it puts more customer pressure on our business because ours becomes more valuable because the cost is lower. It's really tricky to explain that to investors because a lot of them will just say, oh, lithium, and we don't want to touch it. But if you think of it in that context, we can weave a story. And as you know, in Startup Land, it's all about weaving a story. The punch comes and how do you dodge it and what do you punch back with? Yeah. So a lot of the costs in here is water and chemicals for the competitors. That's why we're the lowest. So as water goes up, their costs go up. What we also find is that even if this is quite interesting, even for these guys, this is Sunresin in Chile. That's a Chinese group. They require water, a lot of it, to achieve that number, and they can't get the water. So Rio and others in Chile will say, well, that's great, but can't do it. They can't get the permits for the water. So that's really important part of the equation.
Okay. All right. Well,
all right.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you. All right. Give us a couple of seconds to we can use your laptop. We'll just swap these over.
There you are. There's the Thunderbolt right there. You want that? Just kidding. That's all right. Gotta do it in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, right? That's the next job. Oh. Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to put that on somewhere.
Okay.
That on somewhere, and then that
So
way
this
you
is the
can
microphone for the people who are joining us online.
And I just need to pull up these. There we go. Okay. All right, everyone. Dinner and half. Let's give them a round of applause.
Right. I'm assuming everybody can hear me fine. Don't stand over there. Come join me. Cool. All right. So as Ray just mentioned, hi, my name's Jenna. I am a geospatial scientist. My specialization is using satellites to learn things about our planet and how it's changed over time. I am currently the in-house scientist at Sensand, which is an agricultural tech startup, where our mission is to enable all land management to be sustainable, productive, and profitable. I actually started as a geologist, so if the 3 people who said they have a background in geology could come and say hi after this, I would be really, really happy. I'm joined by Nav, who is one of my co-workers, and tonight we're going to be talking about some of the interesting challenges we've had about trying to combine science with product and with software engineering.
Yeah, and I'm not a remote sensing scientist with a PhD, so I'll be on topic.
Sure. Okay. So for those who perhaps haven't heard the term of, or haven't heard about geospatial science before, it's not quite as recognizable as geology and biology. It's the science, it's all about where things are on the planet and how those things relate to each other. And that is both how things relate to each other by location or spatially, but just as importantly, we also look at how things relate to each other through time so that we can assess how the environment has changed. So that's kind of the umbrella science. And underneath that, you've got remote sensing, which is a subdiscipline, which is my specialty. And that's all about using things like satellites and aircraft and drones to collect information about the Earth without actually having to be at the spot that you're collecting the information about. So in the past, I have used satellites to track down marine plastic pollution on sort of remote islands. I've been involved in projects that use satellite data over, say, a 30-year time span to look at how forest health has changed over that time. So as the GIF kind of mentioned, it's like playing a big game of Where's Wally or Where's Waldo if you're American. So when I started at Sensand, one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to take the insights that you can get from remote sensing and make those more widely available to other people. Something that I do a lot of and that remote sensing scientists tend to do a lot of in general is we build models. I've included an example of an output from a model here. This is a model that was designed to track disturbances that happen in forests and then also to track how those forests recover again over time. But the thing about working with models is that it's an iterative process. So to get to something like this, you're going to go through multiple steps before you get to a final output. And that can cause some challenges. It caused a few, shall we say, teething problems when I started at Sensand. Because when you're going through this iterative process, it's really important that you're getting feedback. You need to know if these models that you're producing are accurate and if they're a true reflection of what's happening on, out there in the real world. And what that meant was that when I started, there was this gap between myself and the rest of the engineering team. Geospatial is pretty specialized, both in terms of the tools that we use and also in terms of the language and the assumed knowledge. And so at the beginning, there was a bit of challenge around how do I communicate what it is that I'm doing in a way that is practical for the rest of the team. It also meant that to start with, it was very much my responsibility to build these models and to create this data. And it was the engineer's responsibility to put this data into the system and get it into the hands of the carbon experts and the agronomy experts that we had who then needed to give me the feedback on what I needed to change about these models. So this was a really hands-on process. It meant that every time I made an update to a model or every time I produced a new data set, The engineers had to go in, they had to update and change the lambdas that we were using to run these models, they had to rerun pipelines, they had to do a whole bunch of work to get that data into the hands of the people who could then assess it. This was really hands-on, it involved lots of back and forth between myself and the other engineers, and it meant that we had this really slow feedback loop. There was a big delay between me creating something and then me getting the feedback from the person who was telling me if it was any good. So this was attempt 1. Attempt number 2 was Jenna tries to be a software engineer and learn all of the things. I have since learned about this thing called the bus factor, so I now understand why this was a really bad idea. But at the time, I thought if I know how to do all the software engineer stuff and I know how to do all the geospatial stuff, that's going to make life a lot easier for everybody involved. And I am somebody who gets very excited about learning new things. So the idea of learning to deploy my own lambdas, run my own pipelines, build my own Docker containers, that was all very exciting to me. But when you work in a startup, you have very limited resources. And if I'm spending my time doing software engineering stuff, I'm not spending my time doing the thing that I was actually hired to do, which is to be the geospatial person who gets all these insights out of the satellite data. The other problem with this is that it doesn't actually solve the feedback loop problem. It still means we have a long feedback loop problem. It's just that I'm the only person who's doing the intermediate steps. And it also doesn't really resolve the issue around communication. Me taking on the software engineering responsibilities would have actually done the opposite and put me into this little silo on my own. So this is where we got to about the time when Nav showed up. So Nav joined the team. And I don't think it took very long before Nav realized that I might have been in over my head and needed a little bit of help.
Yeah, PhDs, eh? What's really cool is that this whole thing, I know you can't see with the contrast, there's a giant fire here. This whole experience was like walking on coals, so it was quite fun actually.
Next.
Yeah. So howdy ho, I'm Nav. I am mostly a software engineer actually, but I'm also a data engineer apparently because most people don't know what a data engineer does. So I was doing data engineering and data analysis. What that really meant at the time was that I was using a really cool thing called Hex. I don't know if anyone here knows about it. If you do know about it, please, I could do with some credits. Hex is amazing, and I was getting all this like moisture, soil data, organic carbon data. I don't know, stuff that I really don't understand. I don't know what this is. Because I mostly came from a world where I had to tell if button A led to button B, led to button C, led to conversion. Oh, so easy. Like if you charge them, they won't continue. So I had to now learn a whole bunch of new things. I don't know any of these things, and I'm going to Jenna and I'm saying, hey, what's a QGIS? You know, I still don't know what it is. It's the most horrible acronym I've ever heard. But it is a really terrible piece of desktop computer software that doesn't work very well on a MacBook, and I had to use it. And then so now I'm talking to Jenna saying, what the heck is all this stuff? And so then she's introducing me to how I don't have to use QGIS. Oh yeah, that's why it's getting fun. So I decided to go spatial, geospatial. All right, so if you don't know, this is an actual video or GIF of Jenna playing with Snake. If you disagree, then, well, that's just you. So Jenna wants to learn remote sensing. Great. I need to know remote sensing. Jenna has touched Python. I mean, a lot of your, PhD work where you got incredibly distracted. And Nav knows Python. Jenna wants to touch the cloud. I know a lot about cloud infrastructure, all right? Well, as much as I can. It just keeps changing. Jenna wants to be self-reliant, okay? So she was one of those weird people who avoids buses. I really don't want to be needed at all. I just want to be really relaxed. I want to clock off at 5, maybe 4, maybe 3, to not be needed. So we found common ground. Yeah. So this is an example of a notebook. You probably can't see it very well. We tried. We're not designers. Don't mock us. So what started was I took the concept of hex and I just went to Jenna and said, hey, can we do this? Or can we, like just do this in a Jupyter notebook? Because it got to a stage where we started to have to deal with financial data, all that kind of stuff. You have fintech people, wealth tech people here would understand. So I couldn't use hex anymore, all that privacy and all that kind of stuff. So basically we started spinning up a Jupyter notebook instance, a little bit of a good old Docker, a little bit of a playground for us to really experiment and prototype. Best part, no QGIS. And what I really wanted from Jenna was to actually understand what was going on, because it's really easy to just throw code in there and more code and more code, and then all we care about is the output. But it's living documentation. So Jenna would do something like, man, this is great because she's actually even put in like headings. A lot of people don't do that. And it's kind of like really expanded on what this code is supposed to do, what the output is. This is just one section of it. I think there is like multitudes of notebooks that tells me how to get satellite data out of AWS. What is a satellite data? What is a file? All these little tiny things that I just couldn't understand. So we were doing documentation, prototyping, a little bit of exploration as well, because you get a geography. This geography looks great. Go to another geography. That geography is weird. It's smaller. The things don't look as good. They look really just, what's it like, blocky, right?
Pixelated.
It's like yeah, that's the word. PhD. It's like Minecraft, right? So that was really useful for us to be able to just iteratively, really quickly be able to tell what everything kind of looks like in a living document. And this is a big part, it's communication. Now, the engineers, they love the code, right? And the problem they had was she was kind of just given this code and people were trying to like just copy it and go with it, but they didn't have an understanding. It's kind of like Stack Overflow, or in the modern age, ChatGPT, where you ask it a question, it gives you code, you paste it, and something goes wrong. So here we've got a little bit of a lesson in what it does, how you do it. And the most important part is enthusiasm. You can tell enthusiastic with a bold and an exclamation, because it actually made the engineers kind of into it. Stop seeing it as just like, I got to display a TIFF on a map. Like, what does that TIFF actually mean? So that was really a big part of this as well. So, I'm sorry, buddy. I looked at ThoughtWorks, and ThoughtWorks told me not to do this. No, to use Jupyter notebooks as production models. In fact, everyone told me not to do it. I think they're right, but we had to do what we had to do. Best practice is boring. You kind of need to be a little creative. So we still had a feedback loop problem. We had Jenna doing these great notebooks. We had software engineers looking at them, still copy and pasting, still deploying lambdas, still going up into the cloud, still putting in the system, and then discovering, oh, gosh darn, it doesn't look good. What little variable did we have to tweak? What little tiny thing did we have to do to make it very different here? It's still iterative. A lot of us we're learning as we go. Jenna's dealing with things that she didn't actually learn about. I mean, you had to deal with, what is it, sheep? I don't know anything about sheep. Enzo Marino.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't know anything about this, and we want to like really reduce that feedback loop even more. So we did the worst thing possible. We took a Jupyter notebook, put them all together, and we gave it a gateway so that our service, affectionately named service here, was able to specify which hosted notebook it wanted and run it, generate an artifact, and get that information back. And we could implement A/B tests there if we wanted. We could play around with certain variables and considerations. Now, I know what you're thinking. Whoa, what could possibly go wrong?
Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, later. But for now, this was just phase one. I mean, it's an MVP, right? There's a couple of things we needed to do. As our demands increased, we discovered we needed to run parallel notebooks. There's definitely room for us to move to a more event-based architecture. It's better than trying to spin up a thing and wait for it to, please give me information, please now, and have that communication open. That's definitely introduced some lag. We we wanted to be able to schedule some runs. We've got a couple of notebooks that pull information from AWS for bomb data. Bomb, yeah.
Bureau of Meteorology.
Still laugh at that. That is one of the funniest things ever. We don't have any unit testing. If you know what that is, you're probably scared. That's okay. And look, Python's not performant. If anyone thinks it is, it ain't. And yes, there's ways to make it more performant. Don't start. But we also made it even slower by using notebooks. So, you know, definitely ways that we can improve on that. I have a couple of branches where I've kind of experimented with converting those notebooks into raw Python. There's so many tools out there. Even the tool we're using to run this is out of a Netflix, where they apparently use notebooks for data science. So there's things out there. We also opted to pay Datadog a lot of money. Now, if you use Datadog, you know what that means. It means we're sending a lot of events. We're relying a lot on observability because we can't stop things from breaking here before they deploy, but we can gosh darn tell when they are breaking. And we can tell really quickly. So that does mean giving Datadog lots and lots of money, but it is useful. So this is what we learned. I think the big one here isn't the technology at all. Like, you could swap this out with 3 engineers that decide to focus specifically on Lambdas, get in a couple more Jennas, and we're good to go. A lot of the issue that we had was just we had some limited resources. We had a lot of vagueness in our requirements, and we needed to move very fast. And that's fine, but flexibility is a double-edged sword, as you can tell with the Datadog bill. The other thing is we had software engineers who studied computer science. It's not the same as someone with a PhD, and it's not the same in this domain. There was so much that wasn't understood. You could read an RFC on how to handle a shapefile, and then you handle a shapefile. And that's a very different thing entirely. And I think what you had was a lack of empathy on I think, both sides. I'll call it out, right? Where you had these software engineers kind of saying, oh, Gianna does all this other stuff, and well, we don't need it. And then what you had was Jenna trying to also then become a software engineer and also developing some empathy in that regard. But poor Jenna was told to learn JavaScript, folks. Just feel for her. Terrible. So we found that common ground, and we were able to move really quick. And I think we got a lot of appreciation. So really, that Jupyter Notebooks here, it was just a way for us to all be together. Anyway, I'll let you fill in the rest.
Okay. So there were definitely some things that I learned as well. The first one being geospatial data is complex. And I know that sounds like a weird thing for the geospatial scientists to be saying. And that kind of ties into my next point. Handling geospatial data and working with geospatial in a research context, I'm originally from academia, is very, very different to geospatial in a production environment and in a startup. So there were a whole host of different complexities that I was not, I perhaps was peripherally aware of them, but was not hands-on with them before I started, that I am now aware of. As Nav said, I have a much deeper appreciation for software engineering and what software engineers do. I certainly didn't appreciate this, and I think a lot of software engineers will feel validated when I say this, that not enough appreciation is given to how much extra work is required to get something from a proof of concept through to something that is robust and scalable enough to go into production and to be put onto a web app that can be referenced and called upon hundreds, if not thousands of times. They're very different beasts, and that was quite humbling to have to go through that process. If the world was flat, if flat earthers were correct, I think both Nav and I would have had much easier jobs to do over the last year and a half, but alas, the world is not flat. I am happy to debate anybody on that. So yeah, this is kind of what we've learned over the last year. It is still very much a work in progress. The notebooks let us move quickly. They let us iterate fast. We have a very fast feedback loop now. To quote Facebook, we do move fast and break things often. I break things very often, as Nav has to often come in and fix them. So that's where we'll leave it now. The QR code on the left-hand side is for the Jupyter Notebook demo that was on a previous slide. So that's on GitHub. It's really accessible. You can go and see the whole thing in action if you want. Nav and I are both on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out and say hi to us. And yeah, happy to answer any questions and hang around for a bit after the presentations. How do I turn this off so that I don't blow anyone's eardrums out? Do I just pull?
You're gonna answer questions. You're gonna answer questions.
Just put it down. What did you want to play something?
No, definitely not.
Just leave it there. Any questions? I'll need to pinch one of those.
Yeah, do you want to take Nav's one?
Well, this is.
Or if you ask the question, I'll repeat the question so that the people online can hear it.
It's all right, we're all good. Did you prove that the Earth wasn't flat?
It wouldn't be physically possible for me to do my job if it was flat. Either that or I'm an exceptionally good actor and I deserve an Oscar.
How's your chat from the
Yeah, from NASA.
For NISA?
So GeoPandas is, I'm assuming Pandas is like a library for dealing with tabular data,
Yes.
and Geo is like a spatial.
Yeah, so
Overlay.
GeoPandas is
Did
built on top of
Postgres
that.
come across your options? Like Postgres has
Postgres?
really
Oh yes,
geospatial
absolutely.
and stuff.
I am a massive fangirl of PostGIS, which is like the spatial extension you add onto Postgres to do a whole bunch of database stuff.
good. And then
It's amazing. I love it.
by extension Django, the framework.
I am not as familiar with Django. I do come from a Python background, self-taught, so I've only really done sort of data science, pandas, GeoPandas, REST stuff. I've heard of Django. It is
Got a
on the
really
very
nice
long list of things for me to learn.
opinionated Testing framework. So it might
It's
be
got
like,
some good testing frameworks.
well, it pairs well
Hmm?
with either PyTest or Django unit tests and such. So it might be like an easy way to kind of.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
you've like coined a new thing. You like notebook as a service. Like it sounds like a serverless notebook as a service. Spawn up zillions of notebooks. Like I think it's a whole new computer paradigm and that you suddenly invented that you should be maybe proud of, I guess.
I don't know if we came up with it. We kind of stole it from Netflix.
Yeah, well.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Absolutely. Look, it is great for iteration, but the goal is that a lot of those, the idea was to move away from it. So if jeez,
No, I'm just gonna-
hold it, jeez. Anyway, so there's a performance issue. Also, obviously, allowing anyone to be able to edit something. It's not an RIPL environment. It kind of behaves like one. Is definitely going to be fraught with disaster at some point, especially if the team grows. The idea would be that if we get enough engagement with that notebook, we have very minuscule changes, or if any, then we just move that into a proper Lambda with unit tests and let it go. A lot of our engineers are JavaScript engineers as well. We have a huge React front end. We have Node engineers. So a lot of the miscommunication isn't necessarily due to Python. It's also just JavaScript. Someone wants to use let's say, a GDAL library with Node, and they want to throw it into a container, and we kind of think, oh, well, that's a different version. We kind of want to have a bit of parity. So there are lots and lots of tools that also do unit testing on notebooks. It's just a matter of setting it up, and a matter of having the time to set it up.
You can run a notebook as a sort of little service.
Little service, yeah.
Please. Sorry.
Not a question, a comment. I just wanted to say we're so lucky to have people in the deep tech community. I'm pretty sure you two have been coming to the meetups since the first meetup, or maybe the second. But yeah, just to have like intelligent and motivated people in our community that put their hands up to talk and have such interesting things to talk about. We're really lucky. So thank you for speaking tonight to all of us. Thank you.
Any other? Oh, okay. Fifi.
I think I muted myself.
Double tap on the side.
I can just shout really loudly.
That's purely for the screen.
Okay.
That's got nothing to do with it.
Sorry, what was the question?
So I have worked in software before and also in agri-tech before, so understand like the pain that you're feeling when it comes to like trying to deploy some kind of like translate geospatial stuff to like software engineering stuff. I think my question is, why do you think there's such a gap between those two. Like, I don't think the solution is
Honestly, scientists really suck at communicating.
but
We're getting better, but
maybe there's not enough demand. Like, usually when capitalism like drives
Yeah.
demand, then that makes
that
something
is also
happen.
another very good point. To be less self-deprecating about it. I feel like the person who's giggling perhaps also knows people in academia and knows perhaps a few professors who need to work on their communication skills. Yeah, so remote sensing in particular, there was a really massive paradigm shift about 2014 where Google released something called Google Earth Engine. And suddenly remote sensing went from being something that is purely academic, very much contained to a computer lab or to supercomputing infrastructure, and suddenly it was on the cloud and available to everyone. So it's a very new field outside of academia. And I think that's part of some of these teething problems, is that it's still kind of the new kid on the block. We don't necessarily have a lot of established workflows and file formats and that, cloud optimized geotips, which have kind of become one of the standard file types. That's only been around for 5 years. Like, it's not that new. GeoParquets have been around for 3 years, and they have sort of only just started to become the standard. So there's a lot of variability. There's a lot of people who perhaps are either really familiar with this stuff from deep academia, or are very new to this stuff and are very excited about it. I'm very glad they're excited about it. But I think that's part of the problem, is that we just haven't been around in the broader community long enough for it to be established and consistent.
Okay, part two of the question.
Yes.
What do you think it'll take for it to become one happy family?
I feel like I'm doing all the answering. Do you want to have a stab at this one, or do you want me to answer it?
I'll answer for the software engineers.
Part of it is time. I think the advantage that we have with remote sensing, or that I found that I have with remote sensing, is it's very much a pretty picture science, and people like pretty pictures. That is helping to sort of, I guess, get the news out there and to make it more accessible. I think it's a combination of time. I think it's also a combination of getting more people who are really deep specialists in this area and putting them into companies like Sensand, or putting them into government bodies, or the broader industry, not having remote sensing geospatial people stuck in the remote sensing geospatial department at their consulting firm or at their construction firm. Put them in with the people who don't know this area, and that's where you start getting the cross-disciplinary communication happening. I think that's when it will sort of become normalized.
I want to echo something around accessibility there as well. I think when I first thought about data engineering, it looked like I had to join a gigantic company and have access to Snowflake. It seemed like I had to just go into a company that had all this deep infrastructure. And when you look at DuckDB right now, that purports to basically run inside a memory, inside a small little Lambda, and do insane amounts of computation. I think even in the latest DuckDB, and you might know, DuckDB released, I think they're now natively supporting PostGIS or GeoParquet, sorry. Yeah. I mean, that really lowers that barrier. If your standard tools can already handle things without having to use a lot of different third-party libraries, a lot of third-party context and things like that, I think it just reduces accessibility. Tools like Hex makes it so much easier to jump into that notebook ecosystem. Jupyter is not the easiest thing to get up and run in. It might be for me, it might not be for yourself. And Google Colab is terrible. I will fight anyone who disagrees. So yeah, I think accessibility makes a huge difference. And there is also something about moving too fast and breaking things. It doesn't mean that you can't learn while you move fast. And I think there's a little bit of an ingrained belief that you just ship an MVP and it goes. You got to know your space a little bit. And no pun intended on space.
That was a fantastic pun.
Okay, I think maybe we'll leave it there. I think we've got a quarter to 8. So thank you, Jenna and Nav. Round of applause. Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. We usually, we've got to 8, but we'll just tidy up now and then talk amongst yourselves. We normally go around the corner to Saint and Rouge Row. I can't remember what it's called, the pub around the corner, if you're keen. Otherwise, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time. We'll chat later off screen.